There's something about the stillness of the African wilderness at night. A silence so deep it almost dares you to break it. But sometimes it's not the things that you hear that should worry you. It's the things that are watching, waiting in the dark. Welcome back to the Gingerbread Man, where we journey into the macabre, the mysterious, and the miraculous, all through a uniquely African and South African lens. From haunted ruins and untold legends to real-life encounters that defy explanation, these are the stories you won't find in your average history book. Tonight, I bring you a tale of two lifelong friends, a final adventure, and a terrifying encounter that would mark them forever, because not everything that howls in the dark is a jackal. Dwayne and Barret were best friends since nursery school. They went to the same primary school and high schools, but after matric, their paths would split. Barret was heading to Stellenbosch to study medicine, and Dwayne planned to pursue economics at Wits. Their homes were just 2 blocks apart from each other, and they visit each other so often that it felt like a second home to the boys. They shared many interests: sports, mischief, but especially outdoor survival. The pair spent countless afternoons binge-watching Ultimate Survival. They idolized Bear Grylls and dreamed of being just like him one day. Even in primary school, they had pitched Dwayne's dad's 2-man sleeper tent in the back garden and pretended that they were on the show. Both loved being outdoors and roughing it out whenever they were on family camping trips. One Sunday morning after church, the boys decided to hike the nearby Klipriversberg Nature Reserve. They knew the place so well that they considered themselves experts. While walking, they talked about how different next year would be. Both boys promised to visit each other during the holidays, and they decided they wanted one last adventure together before going to university next year and parting their separate ways. Suddenly, Barrett's face lit up. "Let's go camping." Dwayne looked confused. "That's your big idea?" But he smiled. "We do enjoy camping," he added. Barret said, "How about ultimate survival camping?" "Go on," said Dwayne, listening. Barret explained that they'd never gone open camping, off the grid, in the wild. For context, open camping is illegal mostly everywhere in South Africa, unless you go to a park or reserve that is a designated spot. Many of these places even require a permit for you to camp there. "Let's do it right here," Barret said. Dwayne chuckled. "Sure, because there are so many camping spots here, and you definitely don't need permits." Barret wasn't smiling. "I'm serious. We know the area well. We have the skills to pull it off." Dwayne thought about it for a bit. "Barret, there's literally a sign that's saying if you're found out here after 6 p.m., you'll be arrested." Barret grinned. "Then I guess we won't be found, will we? It'll be like our own episode of Ultimate Survival." Barret could see the cogs working in Dwayne's head. He started warming up to the idea, and by the time the pair reached the reserve exit, they agreed to do the trip. They had agreed on a date, and they'd even started planning their camping adventure together. 3 weeks later, with their final exams done and dusted, the boys prepared for their adventure. They had planned to bring along only the essentials: a bottle of water each, their pocket knives, and their cell phones, of course, to capture pictures as keepsakes and proof of this adventure. On Thursday, the 23rd of November 2012, they met outside the reserve at exactly 3 p.m. Before entering, they reminded each other of the 3 rules that they had agreed upon. Rule number 1, don't go anywhere alone. Rule number 2, if caught after dark, act panicked and say you were lost. And rule number 3, if you did in fact get lost, go to the old farmstead and wait on the bench. They started on the easiest hiking trail, visiting all the well-known spots. But as the day grew and the shadows grew long, they began climbing high into the hills off of the trail. Their adventure had begun. They made their way into thick vegetation to make sure that they were hidden. Once they were sure that no one could see them, they changed into warmer, darker colored clothes to blend into the environment. The time was 5 p.m. They had exactly 1 hour before sunset, after which they would risk getting caught. They hiked for about another 15 minutes, then decided on a spot to camp for the night. They considered bringing a tent at first, but decided against it. Firstly, it would be very hard to sneak a tent into the reserve, and secondly, Bear Grylls didn't use one in Ultimate Survival, so they wouldn't use one as well. They spent the last few minutes of sunlight constructing their shelter out of sticks and leaves, as well as setting up a fire. They recorded all of their doings for their channel that they would make to be famous one day, and they ended off by boiling some of the water that they had treated from the river earlier. After the water had boiled, they threw in their Maggie 2-minute noodles, ate supper, and watched the sunset. After eating and talking, they settled down for the night and put out the fire. So far so good, they thought. They hadn't been caught. Their plan was working. However, the night was still young. Barret was the first to awake. He had made a circle of twigs around their camp. He had learned this from his time as a scout. Anyone who stepped inside would break the circle of twigs, thus alerting the boys to their presence. The twigs had snapped. Barret sat up carefully scanning the darkness, pressing his ears into the thick night. He began reaching for his phone, only to realize it was missing. Then, to his horror, he saw that Dwayne was gone too. Panic surged through him. Should he run? What would Bear Grylls do? But this wasn't TV. This was real life. Barret lay still listening. Heavy breathing circled the camp. It sounded human. Closing his eyes, Barret waited for what felt like forever, but in fact was only 10 minutes. Eventually, he gathered up the courage and sat up again. Hearing nothing, he decided to search for Dwayne. He wasn't worried about being caught, just about finding his friend. After a while, his eyes adjusted to the darkness enough for him to move out of the thick bushes and onto a nearby trail. He had no plan, but he remembered the rules that they had made. One in particular, that if you get lost, make your way to the bench in the old farmstead. Barret was halfway down the hill when he heard heavy breathing and footsteps. He also saw the beam of a flashlight. He ducked into the thick overgrowth, unaware that he walked right into a thorn tree. Gasping quietly in pain, he carefully lowered himself deeper into the bushes. Two figures in dark hoodies stopped just meters away from him. "I told you, we should have taken both of them the first time," said one voice. "Then we would have woken the other and risked the struggle," replied the second voice. "He must be awake and unharmed. We want him scared." Barret's heart sank. Were they talking about Dwayne? And was he next? Suddenly, a snake slithered past Barret. He gasped. The men shone their flashlights into the bushes, but thanks to Barret's dark clothes, he was not spotted. After a while, the men moved on. Once sure they were gone, Barret crept out and headed toward the trail. His heart pounded as he spotted a security bucky in the distance. Probably checking on guards at the reserve's entrance, he thought. Barret ignored the pain from the scratches and cuts that he had got and ran towards the exit, screaming as loud as he could for help. A guard quickly came out to investigate. Barret was pale, covered in scratches and dry blood. He calmed himself down and explained everything, then demanded that the police be called. Instead, the guard radioed in. Minutes later, a double-cab bucky arrived, and another security guard got out. The driver told Barret that he would take him to the police station. While there at the police station, his colleague would search for his friend. Barret slumped into the front seat of the vehicle, relieved, catching his breath. Then, the radio crackled. "Come in, Delta," a voice said over the radio. Barret froze. He recognized the voice as that of one of the hooded men from the trail. Looking ahead, he realized they weren't going in the direction of the police station, but to the other entrance of the reserve. His hand went for his pocket knife, but before he could react, a large figure sat up behind him. The man pushed Barret into the seat and covered his mouth with a damp cloth. Barret struggled briefly, but before he could do anything more, the chloroform took effect. The last thing he heard was the driver saying over the radio that he has the second one and that he's bringing him in now. Barret woke up with a huge headache. He was tied to a large tree in the reserve. In front of him was a clearing with a large campfire. Terrified, he asked, "What's going on? Why are you doing this?" One of the hooded figures approached. "There's a reason you're not supposed to be here after dark. This is our land. It always has been. Now you have upset him, and someone must pay." Trying to stay brave, Barret asked, "Where's my friend?" The man pointed to a large gash on his cheek. "He did this to me. He defended himself with honor, so he was rewarded with a quick death. You, however, won't be so lucky." Barret's pleading was ignored. The firelight reflected in his eyes, growing larger and hotter. Soon his entire body was engulfed in flames. His screams echoed through the reserve. The next morning, Judy was taking her usual sunrise walk through the reserve. She loved the silence and the beauty of the early mornings. As she approached the old farmstead, she noticed something peculiar. A figure sitting on the bench. It was a teenage boy, not older than 17, she guessed. She greeted him. The boy turned his head and returned the greeting softly. "What are you doing here?" she asked. The boy replied quietly, "Just waiting for my friend." Judy looked at the horizon, admiring the sunset. When she looked back at the bench, she saw that the boy had vanished. Judy didn't report the encounter. She was afraid of ridicule. But a few days later, after reading the local newspaper, she went to the police. 2 boys were reported missing. One of the 2 was the boy she saw sitting on the bench. Dwayne and Barret's bodies were never found. To this day, no one is allowed in the reserve after dark, and legend has it that if you visit the reserve just as the gates open and make your way to the old farmstead bench, you might catch a glimpse of Dwayne waiting for his friend. So that's going to do it for today's story, guys. Tell me in the comments below, have you ever seen anything weird in the Klipriversberg Nature Reserve, or any reserve for that matter? If you enjoyed today's video, please hit that like and subscribe button. Don't forget to turn on notifications so that you are alerted when my next video drops. With that being said, until next time, stay safe, stay curious. God bless.